Welcome to this video, which is part of the 2021 edition of the Lund Contemporary Festival. And I also say welcome to Michael Edgerton.
Thank you.
You're composer and professor of artistic research at
That's
the
right.
Malmö Academy of Music. So very warm welcome.
Thank you.
So we will talk about your research and your artistic work. And later also we will be joined by your doctoral student, Felicita Brusoni, to talk about her research and also to discuss your piece Anaphora, which Felicita eventually will also perform a parts of that piece here. But let's start a little bit more generally about your artwork and your research. I know you have been influenced by a big variety of styles and genres, and also you have composed for a large number of different instrument combinations. But one thing that often comes up as an inspirational source is different kinds of scientific processes and scientific models. Could you tell us a little bit about the role that natural sciences have played in your and maybe still play in your artistic work?
Well, I think it's stemming from the time when I was a student, going through kind of typical academic types of procedures stemming from tonal harmonies, theory classes where we learn how to compose according to the style of Bach, the style of Mozart, Beethoven, etc. As we moved into the 20th century, how are we dealing with these different sorts of complexities of sound and complexities of structure? And so I began looking at, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, mechanical types of issues, such as why does glass break at certain angles when a car passing by will shoot a stone up into the window and crack the windshield of a car coming in the opposite direction. Looking at things of mechanics and how they work in the physical world, and trying to transfer those organizational principles and processes onto what we do as artists. It was a way to extend thinking beyond harmonic language. So that was the beginning of this idea of looking into other systems that might impact sound organization. And just broadly, I'm attempting to look at sound as a map. So if we think of a map of the world, I'm looking to go to those parts of the globe that are less inhabited than others. So instead of going to China, I might go to, I don't know, some country in the Sahara where there's very few people. So I'm looking to explore sound and its organization in ways that are not just reactionary, but certainly not following the mainstream. My most recent piece was part of a collaboration with a researcher at ESS, the European Spallation Source. And there we were looking at cryogenics. So when you, in the science fiction movies, when people are deep frozen for 1,000 years and then they wake up, that's cryogenics, right? And so cryogenics are used at ESS in order that the neutron beam that's being sent down, or is a proton beam, anyhow, that's being sent all those hundreds of meters before they're smashed into this wall, the cement wall, they need to be cooled. And if they're not cooled, then the whole place is going to explode. And so cryogenics is a way to keep the place running, basically. But it's a fascinating world because there's all sorts of interesting phenomena when you get into ultra cold states. We're talking about states that go down to absolute zero. And it's really fascinating to read about the types of fluid behavior and the types of turbulence that exist along absolutely slick surfaces without any turbulence. So it's fascinating.
So would it be correct to say that you find a particular scientific phenomenon that interests you, and then in a way like translates that process into a musical process?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's inspiration. Sometimes it's as simple as that. But usually I try to do something with the process that makes sense. Otherwise, why talk about it?
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you in that case, it's more like there is maybe a sound that you're searching for a sound, and then you use the scientific processes as a way to achieve the sound, or?
Well, it's more, how can we split the sound? How can we break up the sound? How can we turn the sound from a simple harmonic or let's say idiomatic way of producing sounds on an instrument like the clarinet, and how can we then turn it into an extra complex sound in which we might have two fundamental frequencies, not just one. So two pitches, not just one pitch. Or we have the spectrum in which we have elements that are heightened so that we have the illusion of more than one fundamental frequency, or changing the color in certain interesting ways. These are the types of things that I'm exploring with a multi-dimensional type of world. And so it's sometimes really involved with the process of making sound, breaking it up, really focusing on sound production with humans.
Yeah, I think a good example of this is which we will talk more about later, your work on the human voice, and your research on how to extend the possibilities of the human voice in ways that are usually not so commonly used in our vocal performances. For example, you have written this book, The 21st Century Voice, which we have here, where you go through this research. And so could you tell us something about this book and the research behind it?
Yeah, it's the idea is that we're looking to explore the limits of voice, limits in terms of sound production, limits in terms of perception of voice. And the approach was that there are, of course, a million different ways you can structure a book, but I thought the way that would be the most beneficial to musicians and composers would be to give them specific tools that we could use in a pragmatic way. So this is based on voice science, the way that people understand that we have a power element that drives the sound. We have something that breaks up the air, which are the vocal folds. We have something that resonates the sound once the sound is broken up, or once the air is broken up. We have a resonator, which is the space from the vocal folds to the lips, and also to the nose. And then we have a way of moving that sound around called articulation, which we do on all instruments as well. And this book uses that basic framework, and with a few other additions, in order to give people very practical and pragmatic things that they can do in order to explore the instrument. Because the idea with this book is not a historical document, this is what's been done, but it's rather what can be done. And it's based on experiments with voice now, and presenting different ways that people can go forward with the instrument as creative people.
Okay, but shall we maybe zoom in on a few specific pieces that you have composed? So let's start with this piece for solo bass clarinet.
Thanks.
Called Binary Instability. And we were talking about getting inspiration from scientific phenomena. And here, binary instability is, as I have understood here, it is a physical phenomenon that has inspired you to this piece.
So the basic principle is that if you have a small box and you heat the bottom with uniformly with a coil or something of that nature, the heat begins to rise. and the liquid inside will begin to revolve around. As the heat begins to rise, the cool liquid is then pushed down, and we begin to have an activity of movement within the box. What will happen as the heat continues to rise is that you begin to have irregularities in these patterns, so that you have areas of stasis, of stability, and then you have areas of really wild instabilities. And so this piece is trying to model that idea, that you have this motion, this movement that's happening, that's being generated by a uniform source that provides islands of stability or islands of irregularity, instability. So it's always changing. So it's not, I hope, giving the perception of being one thing, but that we have a changing types of phenomena between stability and instability. And it's a challenge with a solo instrument because you have one thing. So are these islands going to occur one after the other? Is it going to be purely a metaphorical thing? For me, that would be pretty lacking, right? That wouldn't be so effective. So what I tried to do is I tried to overlap sounds simultaneously, so that the bass clarinetist would be making a noise sound at the lips while producing a sound from the vocal tract. It could be from the vocal folds, or could be some other location, while producing a sound on the bass clarinet, while moving the reed off center so that you have sounds escaping from two different locations or three. And so it's that idea that we have an overlapping of simultaneous sounds so that we can have regions of instability or stability.
At the same time.
At the same time, yeah. So it's really the 3D image of the box. Yeah.
Complicated for the musician to play almost play an ensemble with himself or herself.
Yeah. So this recording was made by Theo Nabisht from Germany, and you were there, Felicita, for this, and he wasn't happy with his performance by any means, because he had worked on it for a couple of 2 or 3 months steadfastly, but he wasn't happy because he didn't go far enough, and we didn't actually have a chance to sit in the same room and work together.
Because
and
it was it was during this pandemic.
Yeah, and life became very complicated last year. Yeah.
Which is also the reason we sit a bit from each other here.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
but maybe.
Should I play?
Yeah, show us the example.
Okay.
It is from this recording in Germany.
Yes, he premiered the piece in Germany at the what do we call that again? It was at that cabaret near the Stadtmitte. And anyhow, he premiered this in Berlin, but this was from the performance in Malmö.
Okay, this is from Malmö.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, we really heard all these multiple layers of different types of sound production that you talked about.
Yeah, I wanted to give an example here of a lot of activity. So there are other sections that actually have more layering when he's doing particularly the circular breathing.
Okay.
Yeah, he has a very long sections in which he's circular breathing for over a minute at a time. And there you really hear the layers pile up as he continues without breathing. Okay,
cool.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next example we will talk about, we have this. It's a piece for piano, where you use the piano also in slightly unusual ways.
Yeah.
And this piece has a rather long title. It's called "Noise is Interrupting My Practice. Silence is when my reaction is quiet. Silence is my protest against the way things are."
Yeah.
So it's a title in 3 parts. What could you tell us about this title?
Well, in a way, this is also autobiographical, but I better not talk about that.
Okay.
So it did have to do with a life's event, and this is literally my reaction to something that was pretty destructive, and I decided to take the approach of silence. In this case. Yeah. I mean, I've lived in some pretty, I've not been in the institution for most of my career. I've been outside of institutions for most of my career. So being in unusual situations all around the world, you have to deal with things on a very, you have to deal with them from people to people, because when you're the constant foreigner, you have very little power to deal with things sometimes, and so you have to choose your battles.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. So this one was, yes, autobiographical, and it actually comes from a short story. And I should have thought to bring that story with me, because it was quite very interesting.
But if we move then maybe to the more musical aspect, the pure musical aspect, in a program note for this piece, you have written that it is a reflection of what otherwise remains in danger of not being heard.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So every sound that's being made in the mechanical world has all of these little noises that normally we don't focus on, like speech.
Yeah.
We have, like, the word speech, we have a sp, and then E, which is the vowel, and then we have the ch. So speech. Normally we focus on the voiced elements, but in fact it's the consonants, it's those noises that define the semantic content for us. So the way that we understand language is not the vowels, not the harmonic, not the pretty sounds, it's the ugly sounds that define what it is that we're saying. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. It's those ugly little sounds that we pay no attention to, that if they're gone, then we suddenly start missing the meaning. What? I didn't quite get that. So interrupting. We have the int, so that's where the tongue comes close to something but doesn't actually touch. Interrupting. And all of these little noises, we ignore them.
We ignore
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we perceive them, or they are important for us to understand.
Yeah, and the thing is, we don't ever think about them.
No.
But if they're missing, then we would certainly think about them. We'd be like, "What's wrong with that guy's speech?
And then, of course, this is also the case with, for example, playing a piano.
Yeah, so whenever you hit a key on the piano, there's a noise that happens at the beginning. Actually, not more, I mean, there's many noises actually. There's about 3 or 4, depending on how closely the sound is mic'd. Like if you put a microphone right on the piano, or even a contact mic, you can really hear the different levels of noise that happen. Now, of course, that would be really annoying if you're listening to Chopin, right? Who wants to listen to those noises, right? That would be incredibly annoying. So what I did was in this piece, had like 1,000 microphones all over the piano. I'm exaggerating, there's only about 7. But we had a problem with the performance in Malmö, which I'm going to play. There's a lot of feedback, and so there's some strange things that will happen in the recording, and that's the result of trying to get rid of the feedback that happened, because the recording setup was not good. It was just a fault of the time.
Shall we listen to the recording?
So let's listen to it. Yeah. But what I wanted to say was that all those little small noises that happen in the piano are now brought to the forefront, and all the pitch noises we're trying to reduce to the background.
You have zoomed in on what is happening in between each normal note, if I may say.
Yeah. So here's a short excerpt, or 2 short excerpts. Excerpt 1, excerpt 2. Okay.
Yeah, I've watched a video of this, and I know that the pianist is like shaking the keys and like slamming the pedal up and down, and so it's really an example of all these noises that we don't really. I mean, when we do a regular performance of a regular classical piano piece, we try to mute these sounds as much as possible. But here you instead lift them up as to the foreground.
Yeah, and it also tied to that important that everything was from the keyboard. Or from the normal playing position. Nothing was inside the piano. Everything was on the keyboard or with the pedals. So he wasn't knocking on the piano. Everything was on the keys.
Yeah. Okay. Next we have a quartet for bass, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, and voice. Inspired by the Mongolian steppe.
Yeah.
And it's called return of the Taki. Is it correct pronunciation?
Yeah,
Taki.
I guess it was return of Taki.
The last feral horse.
Yes. So Taki is a horse that was once thought to be extinct in the wild, which was domesticated on a few farms, which was then returned to the wild, and it became again a wild horse. So feral refers to something that was once wild, that was domesticated, that now becomes wild again. So, and this was in the world of biology kind of a big phenomena, because this horse was thought to be extinct. And now it's again alive and living. And Taki is a short, squat horse, very powerful. And it's very interesting to see the relation of Taki with other sorts of horses, because they're so powerful, these horses. The breed, and it's fascinating, and it's a nice story. This piece, in a simple way, are the sounds of Mongolia, the animals that inhabit the natural world.
So you have listened to these sounds and recorded these sounds and analyzed these sounds and then incorporated into
I've analyzed some of them.
Or
yeah, so for instance, like singing sand, there's this phenomena in which sand, when it's being blown at certain with certain pressure at certain angles, can actually have the perception of singing. And it's in such a way that sometimes people are really scared to go to some regions of the world. Like, they won't go there, some native societies, because they'll be so freaked out, like, no, don't go there at nighttime, because that's when the spirits come, and we'll get killed if we go there. So it's really interesting that these singing sands are also part of the Great Gobi Desert in Mongolia.
So then you have analyzed it with the help of scientific techniques in this case, and then in a way try to recreate the sound, or
not exactly recreate, but influenced by the nature of a singing sand, or the nature of the reindeer, or the nature of the wolf. I mean, yes, I used the wolf call in this piece. But not sung in a typical way, like somebody mimicking a wolf. We won't do that.
But more.
Hopefully more interesting. Yeah.
More metaphorical, or
No. It's that I have the voices sent through instruments.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can hear the typical line of the wolf cry, but it's through the instrument, which then adds a different resonating property, and et cetera, et cetera. It's one of the few pieces that I actually use text. And this is ancient Mongolian text, not modern Mongolian, but ancient Mongolian from about 1,000 years ago, and speaking the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Yeah, so if I didn't know that these sounds were produced, through our traditional Western classical instruments, then I probably wouldn't have guessed. But
Cool.
I think you can really hear, I don't know that, or if I didn't know that it was the Mongolian steppe, maybe I shouldn't think of exactly that, but you could definitely, relate to some kind of natural sounds.
Cool, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's time maybe to welcome Felicita on stage.
Okay.
Okay, so now I welcome Felicita Brusoni.
Thank you very much.
Also to join us on stage. And you are a singer, a high soprano to be
Yes,
more
I am.
specific. And you're also a doctoral student at the Malmö Academy of Music. So we will soon talk about Michael's composition Anaphora, which you will also perform a part of. But please first let us know a little bit about your own research project as a doctoral student.
Yeah, thank you. So I can say that actually my project and my own research project and my life here began by chance, and it is really linked to this piece named Anaphora by Michael. Because actually 1 year ago, it was the beginning of 2020, and just before the pandemic and everything else, I was here to have some rehearsals and to study the piece with the composer, so with Mike. And it was a sort of, not really a rehearsal, but also something like going deeply inside the piece and the sounds inside the piece and the possibilities of voice in general. And that led me to the possibility of doing this doctoral project here, which is, as everybody knows, a forward university about the thing of having the artistic research program in general. For example, in Italy and in south of Europe, we don't have this. So for me, it's a great opportunity because it's not only a research, which is normally intended as scientific research, but also the possibility of doing research inside my job, which is of a singer. Because my background is of an operatic singer. So I studied classical singing as for the beginning, that my main subject was vocal chamber music, focused on 20th century and 21st century music. And then since 2012, I started to explore the possibilities of voice, trying to go over the boundaries, the normal boundaries. So contemporary music, but also experimental music. Then so I landed in this particular piece, Anaphora. And that gave me the rehearsal that we have, Mike. It really gave me the main idea of my research project, which is built around the extra normal voice, which is every use of the voice that is not considered as normal, like speech or like classical singing or like pop singing or this kind of stuff, but a voice that is used for 100% or trying to use for 100% of its actual possibilities. So my intention is to build up a sort of method, working with composers on one side, but also with other singers on the other side. So all together to build up these new methods to handle new techniques, to improve these extra normal voice techniques. And my intention is also to build up an archive which could contain both physically and in a digital way scores, but also audio files, video files, everything around this thing of the extra normal voice. And it would be like a cool place on the internet where you can have scores and you can click on some excerpts on the score and you can have exactly the audio file from that particular excerpt, or video files, or tutorials to improve that particular techniques and things like that.
Well, for me as a composer, that would be extraordinary. I mean, it would be really great to to have such a place to, as you say, an archive, or a place where you can actually study and see. But I guess also for other singers to to be able to. But are you thinking of like creating some kind of like notation conventions, or because of course that's always a problem when working with new music and almost never used before techniques that everybody invents their own notational language in a way.
Yeah, the thing is that for voice and for solo voice pieces, for years, the main masterpiece have been Sequenza 3 by Luciano Berio. So the most part of the notation is taken from there. But of course, things are going forward in the meantime. So yeah, my other purpose was to find new solutions for notation. Also, we were talking with Mike about building up a system in multiple levels, to, in case of sounds with, of course, multiple levels of little sounds inside. So yeah, we're trying to build this with the composer's help, of course.
And also, I read on your profile at the Lund University research portal that you might also use the help of other experts from other disciplines, like maybe medical experts. And
yeah, for sure. A large part of the project is to study in the most scientific way the voice. And we're for the moment we're collaborating with this human lab here in Lund, and trying to develop some techniques. We're trying to discover some more things about this M4, which is a glottal whistle.
Yeah, we're beginning a project that will look at medical aspects of the voice. So we're working with medical professionals, beginning that process, because it's quite a lengthy process to be able to work with people in hospitals and in clinics. But this is a project I've been involved with for a long time, over 10 years, and we're going to begin this phase of the project, and that's well on its way.
Yeah, that's why I will ask for the help from the linguistics area, the phonetics and all this stuff. And also, as regarding the applications of this extra normal voice, I was wondering some kind of applications in the video games world, because I've noticed that we have the Massive, that is the Ubisoft
in Malmö.
main, exactly, just in front of the Inter Arts Center. So maybe, we can do something together, because they're using a lot of this kind of sounds.
Okay, so this piece, Anaphora, how is this linked to your project or your research?
Yes, you want to introduce the piece, or?
Well, maybe just briefly. This is a piece for 56 classes of multiphonics, loosely grouped around the ideas of voiced and voiced multiphonic, voiced and unvoiced multiphonic, unvoiced and unvoiced multiphonic.
So three main groups.
Three main categories, but sometimes they're a little bit in flux because the voicing can change very rapidly and very quickly, because you can have a pitch sound without voice, for instance.
Could any one of you make any examples maybe of these, a voiced and voiced multiphonic and a voiced and unvoiced?
Yeah, for sure. I will start with the voiced and voiced multiphonic, which is the combination of normal vocal pitch and the vocal fry, which is basically the... Yes, of course. So normal pitch is vocal fry, and I can add the two together, which means that they're both made with vocal folds. So we have a voiced, coming from the same source, which are vocal folds. So I will start with the pitch and then add the vocal fry. And the funny thing is that the resulting is 1 octave above the pitch that I took with a normal pitch sung. So this is one of the 56 multiphonics. Yeah, then we can have some examples from the second category, the voiced and unvoiced sounds. Let's take, for example, it's not from this piece, but it's from a piece by Vinko Globokar. And the name of the piece is Jenseits der Sicherheit, which means, again, over the comfort zone, we can say security zone. So again, going beyond the boundaries. And it is a normal glottal pitch plus a whistle. So again, and then all together. And this piece in this excerpt involves also the voice coming outward and also inward. So it is a mix of the two things. And it goes faster and faster. Now, just to take the last category, which is unvoiced and unvoiced sounds. For example, I can try to match the palatal frication, which is with an aggressive nasal frication.
There you go. Yeah.
And this is pretty challenging.
Yeah.
And that's what I love from the piece Anaphora. The tease. That you don't have these techniques like studied and taken and put there. But the aim of the piece is to continuously searching for the sound.
There should be a struggle at every moment of the piece.
Every
There's a
moment.
struggle. Yeah, like producing those two sounds together is really difficult, and you have to really fight for it.
When I listen to sound files of this piece at your website, it struck me that actually this enormous exercise it gets through to the listener, because I realized I was there myself, like sitting and trying to be with the singer in a way.
Yeah.
Not that I did the same thing, but I was like really tense from this
That's beautiful.
struggle from
Nice.
from the singer.
And for me it's also important that it has to do with really have small changes inside what you are doing in that precise moment.
Yeah.
And this little changes, we're talking about, I don't know, less than 1 millimeter in every muscle you move inside, and we're talking about things that you can see. So really small changes that can lead you to other ways. One way, two ways together, three ways together.
Yep.
And every time you don't know which way will be in the end. And that's, for me as a performer, is so amazing, because you're there and you're really, you don't know where you're going to. So that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I have one question for Michael, actually, because since this piece, it's in a way both a musical composition, but also in a way a catalog of sounds, or of sound producing techniques, maybe. Was there, I mean, in the compositional process, did this mean any difficulties, like an internal antagonism between these two aspects, if you see what I mean?
Absolutely. So it's really pretty radically different than normal compositional activities, because I had to be true to the notion of multiphonic 1, multiphonic 2, multiphonic 3. I mean, I didn't work in that way, but you have all these different sets, and within each category of multiphonic, we have this aspect of these micro changes, which I call scaling. Right? You make very small changes using the same parameters, same methods, and you begin to get different results, which is something that Jaap Blanc does quite well as an improviser. So this then really messes with the idea of repetition, for instance, which is something that we use. We use materials and then we reuse them in different ways, in different contexts, sometimes very slight, sometimes very literal repetition, and this piece is based on a different idea. So how do I then achieve the notion of repetition while adding different multiphonics? Some of the techniques are repeated from time to time, and so I do build in this kind of literal repetition, but sometimes I have to, through 2 or 3 different multiphonics, I have to link them by taking one element that stretches from multiphonic 3 to multiphonic 20 to multiphonic 39 by using some sort of similar procedure, which could be air, which could be ingressive phonation, which could be something with the nose. I mean, it could be with the palate moving up and down. There's a lot of different ways to work with those ideas, but it's how do you make a line through different procedures. It's like taking a fishing line, or you tie it to a needle, and you put it through one type of material, then through another type, and then through the glass. Something like that. You're right. It's extreme difficulties in that way.
And then this, I guess, is the meaning of the title, right?
Yeah.
Because anaphora is a word from ancient Greek, which means carrying on
Yeah, repetition at
repeti-
the
yeah, it's the same
beginning of a
thing.
phrase.
Yeah.
So I have an example at the beginning of the score from Shakespeare, using an anaphora in Shakespeare, or anaphora in Shakespeare.
Like a
Anaphora.
quotation in.
Yeah. Is
in
it there? Is it at the beginning of
Yeah.
the score? You have that?
Yeah, actually, it's here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We can show it
This is from
to
Richard
one
the
of the
Second.
cameras, maybe.
So here is the, in the middle of it. This royal throne of kings, this sceptred isle, this earth of majesty, the seat of Mars, this other Eden demi-paradise, this fortress built by nature for herself against infection in the hand of war. This happy breed of man, this little world, this precious stone set in the silver sea, blah, blah, blah. That's a...
Okay, yeah. So
Anaphora.
yeah, and this repetition is something that occurs in a way
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
but in different
Yeah,
forms.
not as stones of one element, but one element of the multiphonic being the anaphora.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not both parts or three parts if it's three part, but it's just one of the elements that's then stitched through.
Okay. So we will finish by hearing Felicita Brusoni perform Anaphora by Michael Edgerton here at Skissernas Museum in Lund as part of the 2021 edition of the Lund Contemporary Festival. So very big thanks to both of you for participating here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was the first excerpt from Anaphora.